years, a lot of you are implementing community stay for quite a while. So that effectively meant we had good trust between us. And I think that's key if you're going to do this in a situation that the operational users trust the implementation team to be able to implement this. Because they've got to agree on something. And the other thing is, some of the things that I wish I'd known better at the time were things like DSDM and TOGAF, because they're the methodologies that already exist. I'm not going to go through them all for everybody that isn't familiar with those, but the bit that now screams out to me is that's basically the pre-project stage of DSDM. That bit is effectively the feasibility and foundation space of DSDM. That is your revolutionary development if you're doing Agile EA. That's the bit that you're spinning round, and when you're actually coming to deliver something, that's your deployment sector when you're doing your architecture. And that's what we did for 2 years. So I can tell you that mapping definitely works. There are a lot of pain points at this point here when you're trying to transition and say you've done, but it can be done if you get the right guys in the right place at the right time. Thank you very much for your time. That was me. I tried to rattle through it. So. Any questions or?
Right, and so can you just explain a little bit about the governance, because I think it sounds that the governance in your EA or your framework was about consensus, and you made a move from complete consensus to sort of majority consensus with, and I think you mentioned that if somebody had an objection, then it would be placed as a veto in the backlog to be addressed later?
Yeah, the way we did it was originally you had essentially a community about as large as this. Everybody sat in a circle and they debated till the cows came home about whether they were going to approve a change or not. And it could take a couple of days to get them to approve the simplest of changes, because all it would take is someone to raise a comment, you'd start the whole bandwagon of discussion again, and then eventually it would boil down. But the consequence of that is you did get strong agreement that you'd got a solid solution. What we needed, though, if we were going to go into an Agile space, was a more rapid response. So what we changed it round to do was that other pattern I had, which had the something called the CCB, Change Control Board, which took place at the end of most days, actually. There was a change that was being mentioned. That was reviewed by everybody in the room, and a change control piece was put forward. That was usually something that either the owner of a team had actually hit a challenge from somebody within their community and they needed a resolution. Usually that was something, in a sprint, you'll have a backlog that you're trying to go through in your sprint backlog. Either something in that sprint backlog that they were expecting to deliver in that sprint had either become a challenge that needed to be unblocked quickly, or we were at the end of a sprint and we were asking people to accept, have we done enough of the backlog? So what would happen at the CCBs is they would either present, this is our description of what we've achieved in the backlog, this is our proposed standard, are you willing to accept that? Now people could either say yes, we accept, or if they said no, we don't accept, they couldn't, as they had done previously in the consensus thing, say no. They had to say no because of. And whatever that because of was, it had to be broken down in such a way that it was an itemised list of things that they didn't like, and they could then be put into the backlog, so that we would accept their no, but only if they could break it down into a set of actions that we could then put into the backlog for a further sprint to resolve. They couldn't just go no. So does that answer your question?
Almost. I think so with the idea of this, so in an Agile world where you have a backlog and you may not achieve all items in a backlog in a particular sprint, that's the whole point.
Yes.
Do what you can. So potentially these veto items could forever remain in a backlog. And
they could.
And you would, so that sort of, that no would never get resolved, is that correct?
It had the potential for that to happen, but the degree of wanting to make it happen in the room, and the fact that people were working together rather than trying to block, meant that didn't happen in the end, because while someone might come up with a veto, you'd have other people in the room going, yes, but what about this? Doesn't that resolve your thing? So most vetoes never actually stayed on the sheet. There were very, very few actual vetoes. Most people asked for time, looked at it, and they suggested some changes that they would like to see. They didn't actually come to full-out vetoes. But we did actually have a mechanism for handling them when they did come up. Usually it was just one item to go into the backlog, and it just meant that actually we just did a review cycle on it, did the change, and it fixed it.
I might have missed in the beginning, but how much did you re-architect the solution? How much did the solution change from what it was in the beginning to what it became after you went through this?
The change was monumental. The data model, I'm trying to think of some numbers to actually, but as a data model, it would, at relatively small, sort of like 8-point font, would fill that entire wall. It was absolutely monolithic. It was a huge data model. That was broken down into something that was probably about a quarter of the size. I remember the charts being on walls, and it would probably only have covered that corner. The specification, though, as a consequence, went up. So the amount of specification you had got higher, because the amount you have to actually top and tail each service specification. So the service specifications became more weighty, but the data model itself became smaller. What that basically meant, though, was you could implement, in relatively few lines of code, an effective service that enabled you to exchange just what you needed, rather than having to implement even if all you wanted to do was have one unit moving around under the old model, you had to implement the full data model with the full exchange mechanism. In this case, you could element just the pieces you needed. There was one more question, because I can tell Dal's desperate to get on to the next one.
Okay. The question is about testing.
Sure.
So, but tell us that the solution was not, this approach was not tested because it was not really a real test, because was an agreement between people and trusting between people.
That's right.
In a different scenario, what could be a test for an enterprise architect? A reference implementation, something similar?
Well, what we were doing is we were doing consistency checks with some of the model-driven architecture pieces we did. There were OCL queries done on the databases to ensure that we had the various different pieces, and there was also, this isn't my area of expertise, apologies if I get it wrong, I think it's query view transformation languages as well that we used to actually check the consistency of the data so that when they were put out, we were making certain we could guarantee it was self-consistent and that the rules that were described in there met, because we used auto-generation to generate documentation. So there was a degree of testing the model and ensuring the model was self-consistent, but that didn't necessarily mean it did what the operators needed to do. All we could guarantee was that it made sense as a bundle, and the operational community said, yeah, that does what it says it should do on the tin. We did take those 3 examples that I said through to actual implementation. We did one using DDS, we did one using web services, and we did one with the DEM mechanism that we had before. So we proved all 3 of those worked at the end. It's been still going on using exactly the same, slightly varied because it evolves over time for the last 4 years, so, and they're still doing it, broadly speaking, that way, so there must be something about it that works as well. I think Dal would like to carry on. If you want to collar me in out there, please.
We've got drinks and food afterwards, so feel free to ask Doug any more questions. But if we can move on to the next one. Sarah, you ready?
Thank you very much.
C'è il voto mica. Yeah.